Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elias Canaris. I'm the CEO of CCNNZ, and my pleasure to be the host of this webinar series with you. You know, when I talk about contact centers, quite often you'll hear me share that within a contact centers, there are 3 Ps. The first P is the product. The product has to be at least fit for purpose. And we're seeing a lot of technologies coming out, and the products and the product mix is starting to increase quite dramatically. But beyond that, we're now seeing that a product has have a second P, a process. That process has to be robust so it can fit around the product to make that product work. But if you have a robust process with a fit for purpose product, the final P is the people. And we have to understand that at the end of the day, we still need people within a contact center. Once upon a time, a contact center agent was the center of knowledge within the organization, with training developed to enhance their product knowledge. Today, improvements brought in by AI is actually enhancing the employee experience. Or is it? Today's customers seem to be more impatient, wanting an instant response to their inquiry and to have access to information that appears to give them the advantage. Our guest today has worked across contact centers that span the finance services, retail, utilities, and telco space, focusing on analytics, fraud analysis, machine learning, conversational AI, and is now leading the digital analytics and AI team at Nice. He has a genuine passion for AI, a thirst for knowledge. He just can't seem to get enough of podcasts and solving business problems, and enjoys relaxing with his puppy Monty, surfing, or enjoying a whiskey with friends. On Christmas Eve 2023, here's a fun fact. He was trying to impress his nephews and ended up breaking his wrist, resulting in surgery on New Year's Eve. Please welcome to this webinar, Ben Hancock. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Elias. Yes, that wrist injury still plagues me to this day. So the technical term for that is hubris, and I've certainly learnt my lesson. I'm certainly not as young as I used to be, and my nephews are far better at mountain biking than I am.
Well, over to you today, Ben. We're looking forward to having this conversation about the contact center paradox.
Thanks, Elias. I'll jump straight in because it's an interesting conversation. I think framing it as the 3 Ps. My approach is 4 lessons, and there'll be some insights along the way. And this is sort of mostly sort of our insights from a technology platform, a software provider. Our large focus is on that first P, on the product, right? The platform, and being able to provide solutions to our customers globally, but of course with a focus on Australia and New Zealand that really enable organizations to be successful. Before I jump in, a couple of plugs to those who are, of course, around the Auckland area or can get to the Auckland area. Our Interactions event, which is our yearly event that we've been running for a number of years now. We'll actually be kicking off on the 21st of August in Auckland. So we'll make sure that we share a registration link after today's session. So if you are in the area, we'd love for you to come along. It's open to existing customers and to people who aren't currently working with Nice. And we would love to see more and more people there. It is growing year on year. And personally, it's always a really fun day into the evening. So let's jump in. This is what we're going to chat about today, a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then 4 key lessons from human-centered transformation, as well as a bit of an explanation of what the contact center paradox really is. We're going to talk through these lessons. Elias and I are going to have a quick chat after each one. Please feel free to pop your questions in the chat as we move through, and I'd be more than happy to answer them. And of course, a bit about the brass tacks at the end. So, what's in it for you? But let's get right into it. So what is the contact center paradox, right? Let's start with what that is, and then I'll talk a little bit about who we are. Customers are increasingly expecting instant digital first service. But the moment that things get hard or complex or emotional, we really want a human to be in that conversation. Over the past decade, organizations have spent millions of dollars digitizing the contact center, sometimes at the expense of empathy and real resolution. This is backed up by some of the analysts in the market. McKinsey wrote that 70% of consumers prefer human help for complex issues. And I don't think that that's changed in the last couple of years. So that's the lesson that we have to learn, and that's the problem that we have to solve. So today I want to share a few real lessons learned. This is certainly not a product pitch, but insights that NICE has gathered alongside hundreds of clients globally, and of course here in Australia and New Zealand. Because modernizing a contact center, it's not a straightforward approach. It can sometimes be quite messy. It's certainly not a technology project, although that is part of it, but it is absolutely a transformation of people, process, data, and culture. But before we jump into some of those lessons, who is NICE? NICE is a global software company who is focused on automating customer experience. We really want to truly unlock our customers' potential, and businesses really need to establish the right foundational infrastructure for that. So our approach is to provide a single unified platform that's optimized for integrations across both AI and automation. And of course, as we move into a world of agentic AI and agents working alongside humans, that really is such a big focus. What NICE CX1 Mpower is an AI-powered platform that orchestrates workflows, agents, and knowledge across that service lifecycle. So at the heart of CX1 Mpower, we have specialized AI that's trained specifically on CX data sets, labeled and validated, and it's continually learning to make intelligent decisions to enhance customer experience from the front office all the way through the middle and back office. And this is kind of a view of what that looks like. So it powers everything that we do. All the channels, data, and media are brought together along with native capabilities, AI models, and generative AI to orchestrate workflows, agents, and knowledge. The platform really is built to be able to design, build, and operate customer service experiences, whether that be from journey mapping, workflow design, AI agents, and CX optimization. And all of it drives three key outcomes: orchestrating end-to-end workflows, augmenting the CX workforce, and automating complex service operations. So this is not a new concept in the market, but we truly believe that we are the only platform in the market that can do all of this to the level of capability that our customers desire. Now, speaking of customers, who are our customers? Well, we have well over 300 organizations currently working with us. Currently, it's around about 325, I think, today, and it's around about 2 organizations are choosing to work with NICE every 3 weeks. If you have a quick look at this slide here, you'll note some very key New Zealand organizations like New Zealand Telehealth, Auckland Council, New Zealand Post, 2 Degrees, who I'm going to talk about today. And recently, we've signed a contract with Mercury as well. So, there's a lot of really key organizations that are choosing to work with NICE and are moving away from other platforms in the market. But I'm going to focus specifically on 2 Degrees. So Wayne Anderson, who's the general manager for digital delivery at 2 Degrees, recently sat down with me. I asked a number of questions to him, and he gave me a number of answers. For those that don't know that much about 2 Degrees, of course, it is a small market over there, so I'm sure that you've all at least heard about 2 Degrees. They are that challenger brand in the New Zealand market. They launched in 2009 to compete with Spark and Vodafone, which is now One New Zealand. In 2022, they merged with Orcon Group, which was formerly Vocus, and are now New Zealand's 3rd largest full-service telco. So post that merger, 2 Degrees has leaned heavily into cloud transformation, data-led decision-making, AI-enabled CX initiatives, making them a real standout example of a modern contact center in the New Zealand telco market. They're currently rolling out Mpower Agent Assist capabilities, which we call Copilot. Has nothing to do with Microsoft. I'll put that out there right now. And knowledge management as well as part of their broader CX and operational evolution. So to take you through a little bit about that. So this is Wayne. He's our guy there. He works with us quite closely, having provided us actually a number of key product insights and making sure that as we release new capability into the market, that it's aligned to what our customers in the local region really need. And so we're really proud to have the relationship with Wayne that we do. So let's jump into the first lesson. The first lesson is that it's people first, which is the true priority. This is not a technology project, right? It's a people transformation. And when we think about transformation, we typically jump straight into the tools. What platform, what tools, what capability? And when we focus on a tech upgrade approach, that's where we end up with, people feeling disillusioned, left behind, uneducated, unenabled. And that can lead to attrition and frustration, and agents and people using the capability in the organization feel like they're not having their voice heard. And, one thing that when we focus on empowering agents and bringing people on the journey is that we get that empowered workforce who really want to dive in and make things more effective and more efficient. And I think Wayne kind of put it beautifully in this quote, is even with the best technology, old habits die hard, and changing tools is the easy part, right? But compared to shifting mindsets, right? Shifting mindsets and getting people on board and empowering those people in the organization, that's the real challenge, and that should be the focus. And when we think about the evolving agent role, right? Typically, a lot of agents can get stuck in this script following, process completing workflow in their day-to-day world. When agents see AI, automation, and self-service hit the floor, that role needs to function. They're no longer the script followers, right? They become knowledge navigators, empathy drivers, problem solvers, focusing on empathy and really connecting with the customer on the other end of the contact, whether that be a digital conversation or a voice conversation. Wayne has called out the key things that he thinks are important into the future, which is curiosity, comfort with AI, and emotional intelligence. So I would ask all of the attendees on this call, are you thinking about the resource profile of your agents moving forward, thinking about how these AI capabilities are going to work hand in hand with your human agents in the contact center? So it's not just a huge shift for what we look for, but actually what we ask of agents, as well as how we coach, train, and reward them moving forward as well. So when we think about, contact center leaders more broadly, if we have a look at the market, Deloitte found that 80% of leaders actually underestimate the cultural shift needed for transformation. And when we spoke to over 400 leaders globally, that 94% agree that soft skills are important for customer satisfaction, but 59% fail to measure them. And when we think about how this actually happens, we ask for customer surveys, right? We ask for feedback at the end of an interaction. And on average, that represents 1 to 2% of our overall interactions. And even best case responses to surveys is maybe around 15 to 20% of our total interactions. And I don't know about the people on this call, but when I leave feedback, it's usually either really positive or really negative, and the truth is somewhere in between that. So being able to analyze all conversations all of the time allows us to have a much better view of what's happening within our contact centers. So bringing it back to the humans, what's the key takeaway here? Well, if your people don't feel empowered by that transformation, then your customers won't either. And modernization without that people first mindset is just that window dressing, right? You see real progress when your agents feel equipped, supported, and valued in the process. And I love this quote from Wayne, where he's talking about modernizing the interface of a legacy mindset is all you do if you don't invest in the hearts and minds and bring people on the journey. So the practical tip here is ask not just what tools you're deploying, but how you're actually preparing people to use and thrive with them. So that's the end of lesson 1. Elias, did you want to jump in and ask any questions, have a little bit of a chat?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. That's been a brilliant activity and understanding in there. So when you look at this, I'm going to ask one more sort of question in here. As I look at what we're doing across in the contact center world, I'm just about to head over to Malaysia, and I've been selected as one of the judges for their awards. We're judging contact center over 100 seats, contact center, best contact center under 100 seats, and best CX. And one of the commonality I've seen across all the applications is that the agents have an understanding of the interaction, what's happening with the customers, and their input in terms of their buy-in, they're being engaged early on in the project, leads to the project's success. What would you say your experience has been with that sort of involvement?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look at even the career progression of many contact center leaders, many of them started in the contact center as agents, right, and have that coalface experience. The challenge is that as you move away from the contact center, I mean, I started as an agent when I was 16 after school, and as you move away from that experience, you kind of lose touch with some of the challenges that your agents are facing on a day-to-day basis. And of course, experience is very valuable, but really getting that input from agents who are dealing with the challenges, they're seeing trends, they've got great anecdotal feedback. Being able to take that on board as part of a planning and strategic approach, I think, is critical. Most agents that are working in a contact center want their job to be easier. They want to be helping to solve problems. They want to be more efficient. So, taking on that feedback from agents around where should we be focusing? What kind of processes are frustrating? And that's actually what I'll focus on next. So I believe that getting that feedback from the coalface, from the agents in the contact center is incredibly valuable.
So Ben, just before we go and look at lesson 2, we've got a question from Sunil on the call, and he says, "Hello Ben, how does AI identify customer issues, and can AI determine the complexity level of the issue? In fact, is AI able to provide troubleshooting steps or remedies to resolve it?" You might have some more insights into that later on in the lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will talk about that a little bit, but that's a great question, right? So first of all, we've built some really intelligent intent identification models. When you think about any kind of analysis, it really starts with intent. If we can understand what that conversation is about and sort of infer why they might be contacting us, we also are looking at how we start to embed other inputs from things like CRMs or ITSM platforms, where we can say, okay, Elias is contacting us for the 5th time in 3 weeks. The last 4 contacts were about, his missing delivery. There's a high likelihood here that he's contacting us again about this delivery and that there's a problem. So how do we automatically solve that and route him through to somebody that can actually resolve that inquiry, rather than putting him through sort of the normal treatment for any other customer that we don't know why they're calling us? So being able to identify intent, yes, AI is able to do that. We've been able to do that for a long time with more narrow machine learning models. So that's not a new capability. Where we are taking it now is being able to use large language models to automatically identify new and emerging intents, and actually update those into the data structure itself. The second half of that question is around troubleshooting and guiding agents to a process, or even automating that and self-serving that through a conversational AI, whether that be chat or voice. Absolutely. We have a number of customers globally and locally who are using our conversational AI tools to automatically solve problems and use AI to engage with customers through their channel of choice. And really what that comes down to is, if we understand the processes and the guardrails that we want that AI to be working within, and we have the right knowledge structured in the right way, then we can actually alleviate a lot of those general inquiries and simple processes. And as we build confidence with that capability, we can start to add more and more complex use cases to that. So yes, absolutely. AI is certainly not a silver bullet, right? I'm not going to be the one to say that it can solve everything, but there's a lot of capability, particularly within the customer service automation LOB within Nice, which is where I am. We're seeing a lot of really clever use cases being brought out to market.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And obviously, I started talking about product, people, and process. So lesson 2, process overhaul. Back to you, Ben.
Thank you very much. And I'm just keeping a sharp eye on the time, so I'll try to move through this a little bit quicker so we can keep it open for questions as we go. So process overhaul. I'll talk about Sony Electronics for a moment. So Sony had a real problem with understanding what could they automate, right? Understanding what kind of processes are highly automatable, and that gives them a great place to start. So they used our capability to be able to actually look at their existing cohort of conversations and find conversations that had repeatable tasks, high NPS, low talk time. and they are great for automation. You know, they're really easy to automate when it comes to you know, the full breadth of any conversation that might be had, particularly by Sony Electronics, if you think about how many SKUs and how many different products that they have. So being able to understand where they can focus their automation efforts in their team was a really big focus. Post doing that analysis and implementing some conversational AI, at last look, they were automating over, well, almost 16% of their total inquiries, which, you know, that's a huge saving for an organization like Sony. So before you start to look at automating, pressure test those processes, right? Have people do the IVR work, and where are we sending people and what processes do we need to have? We have tools that can help you with that, of course, but what's actually adding value for customers? What's wasting agents' time, right? So that analysis first before starting to implement automation is critical. And if we think about it in a more simplistic way, if you digitize without redesigning the processes, effectively you're creating the same problems, but faster. And an example that Wayne gives from 2 Degrees is that he actually thought that the call routing was solid. They thought it was pretty effective. But once they started using our auto summary, which is AI summarization, and interaction analytics on the platform, they realized that in some pockets, it was actually working against the customer experience, and they were getting negative experiences where they actually thought that they'd done a good job. So being able to sort of take our egos and our own opinions out of the process and actually understand what the data is telling us is really important. And so 29% of organizations that we see globally aren't doing omni-channel in the way that they would like, and they're not getting that seamless experience. And to kind of expand on that, a lot of organizations I've worked with think that omni-channel is adding all of the channels, right? You know, we're going to do all of our social channels, we're going to do web messaging and voice and app, but actually what that can lead to is channel bloat. And customers are confused about where to go for different types of use cases. So what I would actually recommend to the people on this call is that orchestration of these channels beats quantity of channels every single time. So thinking about how you want customers to move through a journey end to end is absolutely critical. So 3 well-orchestrated channels is much better than 5 that don't talk to each other. And some of that will come down to the channel, to the platform choice that you make. So the key takeaway for this lesson is pressure test your processes, understand where the gaps are, understand how customers are moving through journeys and what's leading to frustration from customers and from agents, and prioritize orchestration of experiences over channel count. That's 2 critical takeaways. Elias, if it's okay with you, I might move on to lesson 3 because it kind of dovetails nicely and we can take a break after that. Is that okay with you?
Perfect, go for it.
Wonderful. So the third lesson that we've learned, not just from 2 Degrees, but more broadly, is that data is a massively underused asset in many organizations. You know, the research backs this up. 95% of leaders say that data-driven insights are critical to customer experience. And I don't think anybody in this world would say that it isn't. However, 37% feel confident in their analytical capability. So why is it that we know it's very important, but we don't feel confident in that capability? The critical thing is that data by itself doesn't actually transform the business, right? It's what you do with it. Are you getting the insights that you actually want? And how important is it? So I asked this question to Wayne, and he gave me a pretty straightforward answer. He said, yes, 1,000 times yes, that leveraging data has moved them from gut feel decision-making to evidence-based decision-making. And that's so critical, right? When you can start to take a step back and say, this is what the data is telling us. When we trust the analytics that we're using, when we're using a platform that actually gives us solid insights, and we can trust the data that we're getting, then we can start making much better, more informed decisions, and we can start trusting that we're going to get the output that we want. Now, 2 Degrees actually found that customers were dropping out of the digital identification verification because the instructions were actually too formal, right? So I think, you know, kind of scared people off. They thought that maybe it was a bit more scary than what it actually was. And so they made a really small change, right? They created a friendlier tone, a clearer call to action, and that actually increased their completion rates without changing the underlying technology. So use data not just to find the big swings, but those small moments that frustrate customers and drain operational time, right? So don't just focus on creating a new voice chatbot or a new digital chatbot that's going to change the world. there is a lot of efficiency to be gained and improvements to be gained in the in-between without having to change platforms, without having to introduce new tech, just by looking at those processes and just by trusting the data. Now, an additional thing is that we sometimes forget that data has a human purpose, right? So on the customer side, we can understand sentiment, history, intent, if that customer is vulnerable, if they're a valuable customer to us. And from the agent side, we can use data to do things like coaching and create knowledge, provide knowledge, manage workflow, increase compliance, right? These are the actual use cases of data, and that's obviously just a small subset. And so sometimes we can get caught in just collecting data simply to collect data and report on it and create KPIs. And there's a lot of focus on KPIs, and there's kind of this idea that if you start creating incentives based on metrics, then the metrics no longer become a good indication of the performance of an organization. So being able to use metrics in the right way, because you want to understand what's actually happening, you want to empower agents to be better, to be faster, to be more empathetic. That's really what data should be used for. When we can use it to increase customer experience and the relationships that we have, again, that's what agents really need, and that's what our customers are looking for. So I'll pause here, Elias, if there's any other questions before we move on to the last lesson.
So we haven't got any additional questions that have come through, but some great insights, which we'll pick up when you finish the last lesson. If you've got any questions, feel free again to go to the Q&A and just add them in there. And Ben, back over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Elias. So we can often see that technology is our savior, but actually it's more like the enabler, right? Technology is not a be all and end all. And I'm saying that as somebody that leads a technology business within a software business. So, technology is absolutely an enabler, but it's not the solution to all of our problems. But let's talk about what that means. So, this is what we call the Frankenstein problem. So, we might have a chatbot over here, a CRM over there, an IVR upgrade, analytics bolted on, and suddenly you've really got a patchwork of solutions that can overwhelm and frustrate customers and agents. Deloitte found that 80% of top performing contact centers prioritize integration over just adding tools, right? So, this is not a problem that's unique just to the contact center, right? This is something that happens across all different software platforms. And our approach to really sort of solve that is that we're open and flexible by design. So on screen here, you see a number of different integration patterns or integration endpoints that are now becoming more and more important as we move into enterprise ecosystems, whether that be large language models or knowledge platforms, whether it be agent assist capabilities, or of course, CRMs. So being able to work with a partner that is able to integrate with an existing ecosystem and provide that sort of orchestration end-to-end is absolutely critical to avoid creating that Frankenstein monster that I showed just a moment ago. Now, one of those things that I want to focus on just for a moment is knowledge. So we often see high wait times because we've got agents, with customers on hold while they go and look for an answer to a question. And that adds to frustration and poor customer experience, and ultimately can lead to attrition of staff and churn of customers. So a big focus for me, and something that I've taken a personal vendetta on, is improving knowledge for not only for our organizations and the agents and the business users, but for customers as well. And a big focus that I've recently seen is that when we're using large language models, when we're looking at generative AI, if our knowledge is not in the right state, if it's not structured, if it's not written in the right way, then we end up with a whole bunch of issues, things like confabulation and hallucination and just plain old incorrect answers. And again, we think that that's going to help us, but we're seeing organizations pull back from chatbots because it's not working effectively, not just in customer experience, but in digital and e-commerce and direct to customer, where we think that we're going to see these improvements. We're not seeing them. And ultimately, it comes down to the data that feeds that large language model. Now, when we're talking about large language models, we can't not talk about knowledge, because we're talking about how do we turn our critical business knowledge that we've approved, that we've gone through the process, that we've created ourselves, and how do we give that to our customers without having to do all of the work in between? And that's what large language models really enable. So being able to focus on those assisted channels first through agent assist capabilities like our Copilot for agents, being able to leverage those agents as human in the loop to retrain our knowledge base and retrain the way that we want to go out to customers with our knowledge allows us to then bring that self-service capability in. So that data perspective from a knowledge management perspective is absolutely critical. Now, when we think about the platform that needs to be able to support this, I mean, this is what CX1 Empower is all about, right? From all the way from IVRs to bots and knowledge and CRMs through to coaching, agent assist, analytics, quality. CX1 is a very, very broad but quite deep platform. And that's ultimately why 2 Degrees chose to partner with Nice, was because we have all of this in one place, and it'll frees up 2 Degrees to focus more on the value that goes out of the contact center rather than building capability that they can just rent from us and provide more capability and value to their customers. So the last, but certainly not least, sort of outcome here after the 4 lessons is the brass tacks. What's in it for you? Why would you go through this process, and potentially why should you partner with Nice? A huge focus for 2 Degrees through that migration from multiple platforms, you know, with the disconnected platforms with Orcon and 2 Degrees when they merged, was being able to bring it all in one platform. And that's what they ultimately chose CX1 for. So pretty much day one, from moving to a single platform, they saw some great statistics, right? So almost a 90% improvement in email response time, which is still an important channel, no matter what people in the industry will say. 44% improvement in service levels, being able to meet their requirements and improve dramatically, and faster speed to answer, right? If I've decided to call because it's something important to me, I don't want to be waiting on the phone for 10 minutes. So being able to improve that speed to answer and even being able to help triage some of those conversations was critical. And they're still evolving. So they're currently working with us on a number of AI capabilities and opportunities within their own organization. And some of the statistics here, you know, they've seen an improvement of almost 2 minutes in AHT using our AI capabilities across auto summarization, an improvement in ACW and AHT from the same capability. And more recently, a 60-second reduction in AHT from AI-powered knowledge, which is then sort of forming into their agent assist capabilities as well. So pretty impressive numbers. So a couple of final thoughts to leave you with that you can take back into your own organizations and start asking some of these questions. You know, I don't want you to just buy the technology. It absolutely needs to be part of a transformation around your people, knowing that AI is here to help, not replace. Just as a small aside, Nice recently rebranded. We're all about creating a nice world. And even within our own, PowerPoint decks, none of the images that we use of humans are AI generated, right? They're all humans that we've actually taken photos of that actually exist. So for us, it's making sure that AI is human and that humans are partnering with AI. It's not about replacement of humans. It's about enabling and empowering. So I think it's a really good reminder as well, is that technology amplifies what's working. It doesn't fix what's broken. Right. And I think that's something to keep in mind as we talk through, you know, other members of your organization who might be in technology and cloud and wherever else, making sure that we're still focused on solving the problem, reviewing those processes and understanding where those gaps are. So a couple of key things to think about, 3 things, and then, a number of other things that we can pass on as well is, are your people prepared, supported, and engaged? As you look to transform the organization, are you having those conversations? Are you doing surveys? Are you sitting down with people? Are you asking for people's opinions? And are you providing them support and making sure that they're engaged through that journey end to end? Are you using data to just measure for a KPI, or are you actually using it to learn and improve? Are you using the insights that you get from analytics and from feedback from agents? Are you using that insight to then look at the processes that are broken and go and fix them? Or are we using these metrics as just simple KPIs and incentive measures? And lastly, are you building a truly modular, flexible ecosystem that can scale? And this is our big focus in the market. We want to make sure that our customers and future customers understand that we can be part of an ecosystem. And of course, many of our customers start with one element and then move to many others. But of course, are you making sure that the decisions that you make provide scale and flexibility for the future? And they're three key things that I would take away. Now, there are a number of other questions that can be asked. Of course, what are the customer friction points? Are we treating AI as a tool to empower or as a cost-cutting exercise? Are we over-engineering solutions that actually could be fixed with a process change? And are we confident in the quality and governance of our data? Are we building the right guardrails? So I'll share this with you as well. These are great sort of specific questions to ask leaders across your organizations and get these answers as part of a transformation. And of course, I'm more than happy to continue the conversation and dive into any of these sorts of things that we've covered here today, whether that's a demonstration or just a friendly chat. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. So that's it from me. I want to obviously say thank you to CCNNZ for hosting me today, and opening it up to any more questions.
Look, I really want to thank you, Ben, for the opportunity and the conversations that we've had. In a moment, I'm just going to share a question that Sunil has asked us again, which I think you've already started to answer in this last series of comments. And Sunil turns around and says, Ben, based on your experience, can you provide some tips on changing the agent's mindset during coaching? So most agents perceive AI as their enemy rather than as a tool to enhance customer experience. How can you help Sunil with that question?
That is a fantastic question. I think the quality of conversations is really critical, right? When I talk about quality, I mean quality with a capital Q. So quality management, quality automation, feedback, and coaching, obviously a huge, important part of any contact center's, ability to improve over time. I often think about the idea that if we didn't have analytics and if we didn't have AI that could score conversations automatically using a set of machine learning capabilities, then what we would be relying on is humans, right? And humans are fundamentally flawed, and we have our own inherent biases. We get tired at the end of the day, or maybe my break is coming up and I don't actually want to do this coaching session. And so the way to kind of flip that conversation, Sunil, is actually to talk about AI as an enabler of removing bias from the conversation. So if we're scoring everybody's conversations using the same set of criteria, using advanced AI models, then it's not necessarily that we're choosing that particular agent's bad conversations that day. And I've heard that a million times. Oh, well, you only listen to my bad ones. You never listen to my good ones. Right? Well, if we're using quality automation at scale, we're listening to all of them, right? We can build a trend. So the way I like to think about it is when we're using quality automation tools like Nice has, it's kind of like an MRI. You don't look at just one slice of an MRI, you take thousands of slices of an MRI and it builds up a full picture of the brain. And really that's how these quality scoring analytics work, is that we're building up a trending picture of that agent's ability to service customers effectively, or sales, or complaints, or whatever their role is. And so being able to use data that's it's not subjective, it's completely objective. There's no human in the loop as far as the scoring, but using that time then to review that score with the agent and say, I can see that, you're not really demonstrating ownership on the whole. We can see a trending line down that maybe you're not demonstrating ownership. So let's work on the skills around that. Or you're not asking effective questioning in a sales environment, or you're not, understanding the requirements. And so maybe we focus on that. So being able to use the tools to actually inform a much more interactive conversation and removing a bit of that bias, I think is, we've seen some incredible improvements just by sort of taking a step back from that human to human quality management, quality assurance relationship, and allowing the platform to answer some of those questions and give some of those insights. And then it becomes a conversation between the agent and the supervisor or the team leader to review that together and look for areas of opportunity.
That's brilliant, because as I mentioned before, I'm going to be heading over to Malaysia to help with the judging, and everything I'm hearing about, and you said this so well earlier on, AI and technology is an enabler, not a savior. And we
Mm,
have to understand that. We have to really turn around and say, this will help. If you take that example of being able to analyze 100% of all your calls, technology can do that. And they can do that sometimes almost in real time and give you some sentiment analysis, which is really powerful information that can help the agent. Couple that with information on knowledge base, and you suddenly have an ability to understand what they're asking for and prompt the agent to deliver an even better experience.
mm,
But at the end of the day, what I'm noticing from the submissions that I've seen, a lot of organizations are looking for first contact resolution. Can we resolve the problem in that first call, as opposed to having to escalate it up or having the customer call us back? And the second element is, how do we coach people? And there's two elements of coaching. There's the automatic coaching that you can do through all the analysis of the calls and passing information through to the agent during the call. But there's also then that post, that human to human, and that ability to still turn around and share information, get those soft skills you were talking about integrated back in there, the empathy, the ability to
mm,
listen, not to cut across the customer. And all of these are elements that we at CCNNZ are working on with some of our partners to say, how do we provide certification to look at coaching, for example? Or how do we help you with other soft skills so your agents can go and learn more? This
mm,
whole aspect of customer experience is a team sport. It doesn't just start with technology, it doesn't finish with the people. It involves every element and every moving part of an organization. Ben, if I can I ask you to share again what your contact details for
yes,
the
of
team?
course. Of course, and please connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, we do have our interactions event in Auckland on the 21st of August. We would love to see as many people there as possible. It's something that we're really proud of. I personally will be there presenting demonstrations and talking about the future of AI and customer experience. And a lot of that focus is really on these agent assist capabilities. Elias, you're spot on, right? Being able to serve the right response at the right time using the right knowledge articles and being able to guide an agent on particular soft skill behaviors within a conversation so we avoid the callbacks, we avoid the complaints. But the flip side of that is, if we're looking to improve first contact resolution, do we even understand why we aren't resolving on a first contact initially, right? So again, it comes back to being able to measure and analyze upfront and doing that work to really understand what that problem statement is. Solving the problem now no longer is a technology or platform issue, right? Across a number of capabilities, at least within the Nice portfolio, we have the ability to solve these things, whether it's be through, agent assist capabilities, supervisor, strategy and operations, whatever it might be. But understanding where the opportunities to solve those problems are, and then matching either the process or the tool to solve that problem is absolutely critical. So I am a guy that will sit here and talk about large language models and agentic AI and vibe coding. I'm happy to do all of that, right? That I love that conversation, but it would be remiss of me to say that, broken process, if you add agentic AI, that it's going to solve the problem, because it just won't. It'll just make it worse. So.
Absolutely. So look, again, I want to thank you for your time here today. Bit of a fireside chat. I know we could spend hours talking about this. Can you remind our audience again, when will you and the team be in New Zealand?
21st of August. So would
21st
love
of
to see.
August. Yep.
Yes,
And is that
absolutely.
going to be
We'll
up
send a
in
link out. Yeah.
Auckland?
It is in
Superb.
Auckland. Yes, it's in Auckland, and we will send out a registration link. We always have some great entertainment. We've usually got bands and local speakers and all these sorts of things as well. So, it was a really great event last year. We saw around 150 people turn up, which, was a massive improvement from the year before. I'd love to see over 200 people there this year. But we will make sure that we share out the registration link for that as well. So if you are in the Auckland area, or you can get to the Auckland area for the 21st of August, I would love to see you there. Come say hey, and we can have a chat.
Well, I can definitely vouch. I was there last year and it was an incredible event. And for sure, if you have the opportunity for your education, for your networking, this is a great chance to go and meet people and talk to some of the practitioners who are actually implementing this. That's where you get the real oil about what's going on across here. Ben, again, I want to thank you for investing some of your time to be with us today. Some great questions being asked. I'm going to just remind everybody on the call and those watching the recording that save the date. The 22nd and the 23rd of October is when we will be having the Contact Centre 7th Future CX Summit in Auckland. And we will also encourage you on the 21st of August to attend the NICE event. That's by registration through NICE. They will send out the links for that separately. And we will no doubt share that also through our newsletters with the team, the wider team. Ben, again, on behalf of CCNNZ, I want to thank you for your time and really appreciate your insights. And again, looking forward to spending more time with you in the near future.
Thanks, Elias, and I'll see you in Auckland.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.